exploring how recent changes are shaping our democratic process. Stay tuned for an insightful conversation with our guests. The program aimed to foster inclusive dialogue among citizens from varied backgrounds concerning electoral reform and constitutional amendments. We also hope to enhance public understanding and awareness regarding electoral reform and compile, if possible, and present citizen-derived recommendations to the National Assembly and INEC for consideration. This program is brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Electoral reforms in Nigeria, such as the introduction of the bimodal voter accreditation system, BVAS, and upload of results, are crucial for addressing historical issues of electoral fraud and enhancing transparency. The BVAS system helps prevent multiple voting and other forms of fraud by by reducing voter identification theft and verifying voter identities biometrically. While electronic result transmission ensures that results are sent directly from polling units to the central server, this intends to reduce the risk of tampering. The Electoral Act 2022 further supports these reforms by emphasizing the need for political parties to conduct transparent primaries and report campaign finances, which helps reduce the influence of money in politics. These reforms have significant implications for Nigeria's democracy. They are designed to build public trust in the electoral process, leading to higher voter turnout and increased civic engagement. By ensuring that elections are more credible and reflective of the people's will, the reforms contribute to political stability and effective governance. This stability can attract investment and support national development, while a more transparent electoral process strengthens democratic institutions and reduces the influence of entrenched political elites, fostering a more inclusive and equitable democracy. Today, we are honored to have Dr. Hussaini Abdu on the program to discuss these very important electoral reforms and their implications for Nigeria's democracy. Dr. Abdu is a distinguished public intellectual and development specialist with over 25 years of international leadership experience. As the country director of CARE International in Nigeria, he brings a wealth of expertise in democracy and governance, having previously led programs at Plan International and was indeed the country director of Action Aid International. His extensive work across Africa and Europe, combined with his academic contributions and advocacy on critical issues, makes him an invaluable voice in understanding the impact of these reforms on Nigeria's democracy. You are welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
Honorable Francis Waive is sponsoring a bill to amend the Electoral Act, specifically Section 65, to include electronic transmission of results. This amendment will make it compulsory for presiding officers to transfer or transmit results, including the total number of accredited voters and the ballot results electronically. how do you foresee these proposed amendments, especially against the background of the extensive work you've done around elections? You've chaired the board of YAG Africa for some time now, and also have been very significant in the work that CDD has done around elections. So these proposals, they are not new to you. What do you make of them?
Yeah, actually, the proposals are not new. They are actually still part of the conversation on elections in the country. Even the last elections was run under the debate on whether it is mandatory for INEC to transmit results electronically or not. And in fact, one of the major challenge of this last general elections was the fact that a significant proportion of Nigerians actually believe that INEC was clearly mandated by the Electoral Act to transmit results electronically. And I think probably because also people didn't go into the details of understanding what specifically the electoral law provides. You know, what's my opinion on this? I think these are very important conversations. What does electronic transfer of results guarantees? I think that's a principle, because there's an impression here that once results are manually transmitted, then there's a tendency that people can easily tamper with the result, and that electronic transfer is tamper-proof, and so you wouldn't be able to do that. But electoral technology is a major conversation in electoral politics. There are still very developed countries around the world that will still do the manual process. Germany is a very good example, one of the most advanced countries, but electronically also highly developed, but wouldn't go through electronic processes and in their elections for one reason or the other. I actually think that having this law enacted, making it mandatory, also means that INEC will have to be provided with the wherewithal to actually be able to run that, because there's a problem, fundamental, because this is a country that is highly developing, with also strong challenges when it comes to technology and the use of technology. INEC capacity, because so many things will have to depend on third parties. One, for instance, internet capabilities that will allow for such transmissions are third party issues. We still have challenges of blind spots in certain locations in the country. And even if we don't have the challenge of blind spots, they can actually be deliberately sabotaged because of our attitude to elections and how elections are managed in the country. Somebody can do something that would just completely trip off internet access in certain locations, and that can be a challenge. So whereas I don't really have any major objections to this law, but like any other law, it is always very important to look at the risk factors associated with it. What does it take, tying INEC hands completely to say you must do the elections in this particular manner, or should we give INEC the space to actually understand how important these elections are and why things have to be done in a particular way? Because in many cases, a lot of our conversations around law are always around INEC. And we often expect INEC to do better than our system, than our infrastructure, than our country itself. And no law could actually guarantee that. It's a continual process of engagement and understanding. So that's my own take around it. I wouldn't say it's a bad idea.
Yeah, I think Wivey was here. Honorable Wivey was here.
Yes,
he was my guest at some point.
Yes,
and the challenge I have is perhaps the lack of understanding.
Yes,
of what the current law.
Yes,
this law is not electronic collation.
Yes.
Now, where we have always had issue is we said collation is the weakest link.
Yes.
Now, what we have is result upload into a viewing portal.
Yes.
That viewing portal does not collate.
No.
Now, when he came, I asked him, what actually are you asking? Because he's saying the law should mandate INEC to transmit results electronically.
Yes.
And I say good, you have upload already.
Yes.
But where you have a challenge is collation.
Yes.
Is there a mechanism that can take the manual results which the party agents have, which the security agents have, and then collate before you get to the RA, before you get to the local government, before you get to the state?
Yes. So I haven't seen the bill, but my sense is that we already have a mechanism where results are electronically transmitted, but they are not also instituted by law. IRF is not a creation of law. IRF is the INEC decisions of deepening the transparency of the elections and election collations mechanisms. So what that actually means is that INEC can have a viewing center where results can be transmitted directly into it. So it's not a law establishing that. So what I'm wondering is that, is this bill trying to make that process mandatory, for that deepen it and transform that to collation? That's my first question. The second one is that there are different layers because of Nigerian federal structure. The way collations are done, they are done at different levels. And electoral complaints and petitions are also done on the basis of these collations. So if you do, for instance, you collate at the polling unit where the elections takes place, so that one you have to count the ballot manually. So if you count it manually, would you transmit through the beavers to the ward, to the local government, to the state? And so if collation become deeply centralized directly from the polling unit and become a mandatory process of collation, it further, for me, in terms of electoral complaints, before results are made public in terms of complaint, it undermines the process, because it actually means that since it has been collated nationally or centrally, depending on the nature of the elections we are having, it makes complaints highly difficult and very contentious. Because if I transmit results from my polling unit straight to the collation center, for instance, in the presidential elections, on what basis? Well, why do we need the word collations? Or where do I actually
Can they be eliminated?
They can be eliminated, but they can be eliminated for some elections. For instance, they can be eliminated for presidential elections. And for me, it even worries me that we have those multiple layers of collations in the presidential elections, because the constituency for that election is national. And so you don't need ward level collation. To be honest, I don't really think that you need also ward level collations beyond local government elections, which of course the INEC doesn't manage. Even if you are running a local government chairmanship elections, you may do well, but when you are doing House of Assembly, which is the lowest level of INEC managed elections in the country, you probably may need wards, but beyond that you don't need wards. So we can eliminate those ones, but that actually means then that the complaints about elections in polling unit and all that will also have to be done centrally, which also increases the burden that INEC will have to deal with managing those number of complaints that may come up from different polling units in the central collation mechanisms.
Thank you. I think for technology, we are shaping the conversation much better than I had anticipated. There are clear issues around violence and vote buying.
Yes.
And those twin challenges are actually domiciled in a different stakeholder.
Yes.
The political parties.
Yes.
How do you think? Because INEC has thrown in some responses to all of that.
Yes.
Vote buying, secrecy of the ballot, conditioning the cubicles in a different manner.
Yeah.
Don't come with telephone.
Yeah.
But you have seen that it has even gone now. From Ondo, you had the Boko Sebe.
Yes.
get money, cook
Yeah.
a pot of soup.
Yes.
It went down to Ekiti.
Yeah.
It also reared its head in Edo. We are going to Edo now.
Yes.
I know that beyond, being in the governance space, you are also a scholar.
Yes.
Is there what more is possible? Because this program is actually designed for solution.
Yeah, actually for me, I have a very unconventional attitude to vote buying. And I always feel that a lot of us who are involved in vote buying conversations and talking about mechanisms to deal with, we are probably not nuanced on this discourse and have failed to understand the contextual political economy that actually drives elections. Elections take place within a particular context. But to be fair, I am not a fan of vote buying, so I can't be expected to say I'm supporting vote buying. But I'm saying that if we are nuanced and we understand that elections take place within a particular context, we may probably find a solution to it better than actually coming ab initio, seeing vote buying criminal, and therefore we need everything to stop to vote buying. Vote buying is taking place within the larger context of Nigerians' cash economy. And secondly, it's also taking place within the context of the gratuitous design in terms of social relationship between communities. And people's attitude to elections. Basically, people go to vote in most cases, and when you go to sociology of most of our rural communities, they go to vote because of certain pecuniary relationship that they have been established between them, either with the candidate or with the people who are canvassing for vote for the candidate or with the leadership of the party. There is certain connections that pushes people to go and vote. But otherwise, people don't necessarily care much on elections and in terms of voting, and therefore somebody thinks that you need to do something extra to encourage me to go and vote. Then the most difficult part that we know we have all struggled with is people going to the polling unit to share cash. Mm-hmm. Because voting generally has to do with a certain level of gratification. Okay. It's either where you want to take delayed gratification, where you want to wait until the person wins the elections and you get what benefit you want to get, which could be cash or non-cash related, or you want to have it immediate. The challenge we're dealing with are the cases of immediate gratification, particularly the one that is taking place in the polling unit, and that's what INEC has been trying to deal with. What can we do further to control such things? I think we need to invest more in terms of dealing with political parties and candidates. So far, the INEC policies and designs are largely centered on the activities of people who are managing the polling units, either the security agencies involved or the people who are going to vote.
Yeah.
But the INEC hasn't made much investment, or we generally haven't made much investment in terms of dealing with political parties and the candidate. And like I have always argued, our major challenge is the values that drives us. Democracy is not simply around those nomadic institutions and structures that support them. Democracy requires certain values and attitude to strive. So if you talk democracy and you don't have democratic values, you have a problem. And that for me is a challenge that we are dealing with our politicians who espouse democracy, but they don't believe or they don't subscribe to the basic values and tenets that sustains democracy. So we have to push that to them. Either there is a direct way of finding or because they don't own up, they don't do that directly. They use third parties to do some of those things. Yeah. What mechanism can we put in place to punish such people? How do we hold them accountable when we see them doing that, both their third parties and the person that actually gave them those things? No one had been prosecuted so far on vote buying.
No, but we saw the EFCC do some stuff around when we were in Oshun and
I think it's just this policing thing kind of thing. EFCC come to scare, to make some arrest here and there, but we haven't, beyond even the Oshun case. the arrest has been made, but we didn't hear what probably had happened after that.
But Dr. Sedi, there's a crime here.
Yes.
And if it's a crime, because when you started,
yes,
you were talking about being nuanced.
Yes.
Are you not, doesn't it appear that you are giving comfort?
I'm not giving comfort. I'm actually being a bit realistic here about the dynamics, because you can't have a rotten pot and eat a decent meal. You just have to clean your pot so that you can have a decent meal. So no matter how much you do, because the pot is rotten, it's not cleaned, no matter how much you try to garnish it, it will still remain a problem, and it will run your stomach. And that is about accepting that we have something significantly wrong in the system,
in the dynamic, in the political system,
and begin to find out what are the ways we can deal with those things, rather than actually going on a palliative and cosmetic way of dealing with these issues and taking symbolic actions. Because what I have seen across INEC designs, EFCC involvement, are symbolic actions. EFCC shouting, "We will be there if we catch you, we do this,"
and they make us look like they've caught some people.
Yeah, they make us look like they've caught some people, and then in the next election you see even more of this issue. They are just things that we'll have to do to deal with that. One dimension is that, look, cash thing, we know Nigerians, we have made every effort to manage the access to cash in the country, but we have also seen what people are doing with POS. We have seen cases of people receiving transfers. Yeah. Some of those things.
Yeah, but it's not just cash. There is also in places where you have PMS distributed fuel.
Yes.
And where people are asked to, and because of the law, the way the law is framed, voter inducement is a bit elastic now.
Yes.
In terms of, first, if it doesn't happen within the presence of the voting area,
yes,
it is not seen as vote by.
You know, my brother, the truth about it is that, look, you cannot have a society that is this endemically corrupt and expect to have a corruption-free elections. And that's the challenge. The challenge is that we have to deal with the system issue that's strengthening, that is brewing corruption. People make money through access to state resources, and they want to sustain themselves in power with those resources. And therefore, if sharing the resources is the way they can remain in power, fine. And that's what they do. Look, you buy your primary elections, you pay, you buy delegates, you buy people who are managing the primary elections, you pay them huge sum of money, you put money aside for you to go to court in case something happens, you bribe judges, lawyers help you achieve. So many of these things are happening. So why do you think that isolating the person that goes to vote
to be a priest,
to be a priest,
an imam,
and an imam, it wouldn't happen. I am not in support of this.
I understand.
But I'm just saying that we just have to be nuanced. We have to deal with
but
the major
of that,
concerns.
it is still a crime. If you
it's
commit
a crime
now,
it's absolutely a crime. When you are caught, you will face the music. Corruption is a crime in the country. We have seen people being caught. We have seen how they are being dragged in court. But we also see what happened eventually at the end of the day.
Thank you. Let's go to budgeting.
Yes.
Budgeting and election financing.
Yes.
You see, in at the beginning, you will hear that INEC budget is about 300 billion or more.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't have the opportunity to break down that budget.
Yes.
We also don't have opportunity to find out whether there are discrepancies between what is budgeted,
yes,
and what is eventually received.
Yes.
Where is the disconnect in this conversation? Because I speak with people in INEC, and sometimes they are quiet. They ask you, yes, these monies you hear about, how much of it do you think we have received? And then for what did we receive them? For instance, the aftermath of the 2023 election, going to court, conducting the runs or by-elections that arise from those are all part of that lump sum that we hear. So what perception do you think that brings in the mind of the ordinary Nigerian, and how can we deal with that?
The ordinary Nigerians actually think that elections are very expensive in this country, and indeed they are. And that when they see those billions, almost close to trillions running, Nigerians feel that what the hell is going on in INEC. And once those budgets are made and they are announced, people just think that the money the next day is actually taken to INEC to spend. And therefore, when there are challenges in the electoral process, they just feel like, oh, these people have taken the money again. And they didn't use it judiciously and all that. Therefore, all the criticism of INEC, you find out sometimes is also associated with how much money people think is going to INEC. Of course, Nigerian election has to be expensive for several reasons. The level of trust in our electoral process is very weak, and is historically so. And INEC have to do so many things to make a safeguard for some of those things. Ballot paper, sometimes we print ballot paper as if we are printing money.
Yeah.
With all the security and the costs associated with it, the technology that we actually deploy just to increase the transparency of our elections, the number of people ad hoc that are recruited to actually support elections in the country is quite huge. It's very enormous. And I also think that, again, our budget management system in the country does not have INEC. So you have this thing they call cash backing. You can have approval, but you don't have the cash. You don't have the cash. You don't have the cash backing.
We'll soon be going on break.
Yes.
But I just want you to touch that place you opened in terms of cash backing.
Yes.
And preparing for elections. 97 million Nigerians register for the presidential elections.
Yes.
So in election preparation, at the end of the day, you have less than 30 million people coming out. Yes. But you prepare for the 97.
Yes.
Is there something we can do about that?
Yeah, I think that's a major one for me. What can we do about that? One, INEC actually always like to be on the safe side. Because sometimes INEC will even print ballot paper in case there is a rerun.
Yes.
You understand? And
you should do that.
And we should do that. Because INEC has to remain prepared. What if we couldn't return any of the candidates in the first round of the election? So is that when, and the law is very clear within the number of days that you actually need to rerun. So INEC has to remain prepared. That is cost. 90 million, 92 million people registered. INEC cannot sit down and say, oh, we think there are only 30 million will vote. Let's do 30 million ballot papers and all that. No, INEC will not do that. INEC must prepare for this 90 million.
And there are people who hold down elections because they didn't find ink.
Exactly.
The ink pad is not there.
The ink pad is not there. Yeah. See, look, I know before the last presidential election, we were having a conversation with an INEC commissioner, and there was this projection that there will be 54 or 56% of people coming out to vote. And I said, look, where are you getting these ideas from? But at the end of the day, it was 30-something. So we can, because it's illegal. INEC must prepare for the number of people that register to vote, and that is cost.
Okay, we'll go on a stretch of break now, and we'll return to continue the conversation.
Stay tuned to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We'll be back shortly with more on the path to a stronger democracy.
Are you ready for change? Join the Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, for the Electoral Reform Hour. This program amplifies electoral reform campaigns and provides citizens with opportunity to make meaningful contributions that will strengthen our electoral process.
I think what we should do and what we've been advocating for is to find a way to harmonize all the biometrics we have been doing in the country so that we have one. If you have your NIMSI card, for instance, you should be able to carry all the data, social security, like it's done everywhere. So when you vote, everything about it is there.
My position is that the result, substantive, the election ends at the polling unit. Once the presiding officer, in the presence of polling agents, in the presence of security men, in the presence of all other stakeholders, including some of the people that voted, counted the scores of candidates and parties openly, entered the results into Form EC8A, and snapped it. That is the real result, and it is that goes into IREV.
Let's embark on the path to significant transformation and well-informed decision-making together. As the National Assembly, INEC and other stakeholders work towards improving our electoral process, you too can be part of the decision-making process by participating in the radio program.
We are on to Comrade Abdullah Mohammed. I'm calling for Bida Local Government Area Council of Niger State. I'm advocating to federal government or the member constituted to look into this electoral reform. That why should a member be in the house to speak the truth? At the end of the day, what we continue receiving or hearing is to suspend that member and to tell him to join any political party of his choice. Who then are we expecting to come and tell us the truth?
This is Brian Orator from Latte IG State. My idea is that INEC should stand firmly as an independent body. Secondly, the local government election should be conducted from the INEC, not from the national level.
Remember, democracy is for the people. Together, we can make a difference. Let your voice be heard in the Electoral Reform Hour, where every opinion matters. PACA, making democracy work for the people.
Thanks for staying tuned. We are back with your favorite program, Electoral Reform Hour, on the network service of Radio Nigeria.
It is still Electoral Reform Hour, and you can be part of this live program by sharing your comments via the social media platform on X at paaca.ng with the hashtag Electoral Reform Hour. And you can leave your questions and comments for us on Facebook via at paaca, and our WhatsApp number 0816-8083-424. The phone lines will be open soon. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Electoral Reform Hour on the network service of Radio Nigeria. We're still joined in the studio by Dr. Hussaini Abdu. Let's pick up where we left off. I know there are public trust issues, and around civic engagement in the success of electoral reforms. How can reforms be communicated effectively to the public to garner widespread support and participation? This is your forte.
Yeah, I actually think that, to be very honest, I think that Nigerians generally are very interested in elections. I don't think there is any issue in this country that drags Nigeria, that brings out the passion like elections. The country comes alive during elections period. The challenge is that we haven't been able to transmit that into certain realities. But the problem also is that people get excited about campaigns and elections, but they don't get involved with the reform process. So when elections happen, you can hear all the complaints. They can hear, oh, let's do this, government have to do that. But when the process is out, you only find civil society organizations that are interested in elections in some of those engagements. I think we need to strengthen community engagement processes when it comes to electoral matters. And there are two dimensions to this. First, for me, is the role of civil society. Those of us with regular interface with communities is how are we engaging people to attract the right contributions. Not that we're engaging as experts, because there are a lot of us who have become experts on elections, and we actually think that we understand elections better, and so what we just do is between us and the parliament. And I think what we need to do is to engage more through the different layers of work we do, through different community structure, and be able to tease out informations, including studies that we can actually carry out that will inform the process. The National Assembly also need to use its own structure. These are people who are directly elected to represent different constituencies, whereas senatorial district, or federal constituencies. And if it involves constitutional amendment, actually, it even involves the state houses of assembly. How do we get constituencies, Senate, House of Assembly, House of Reps, coming together, engaging their constituency in a very honest manner? Because we see some of this kind of engagement that is actually done in a very cosmetic way to sometimes to justify what has been budgeted for certain amendments here and there. And it's not fair on the people. So we need to increase the robustness of our engagement. I think in the last 10 years, I'm sorry to say, the National Assembly public hearing mechanisms have completely failed. You go for a public hearing, there are not even chairs to sit on. You go, you can't even articulate, you can't engage. Sometimes the public hearings, you go to the National Assembly and they just want to do 40 minutes. And
they have used also insecurity to limit.
Yes, they've limited participation. Access to the National Assembly has become extremely difficult. And so for me, I don't think I've entered that National Assembly probably over the last 5-6 years for any reason, reasons in relations to public hearing. So there is those things, and therefore the National Assembly structure is becoming more like going to visit a minister or an executive. So we need to open up that, and it is when we open up that we can create that ownership. And even when the law is enacted, we also need to spend time to educate people about this law.
MacArthur Foundation has supported us to go around the country.
Yes.
And what's coming out is astonishing.
Yes.
The most enlightened segment of society have no connection with the legal regime with which elections
they don't. And that's what also causes electoral violence and some of the contentions on elections, because people assume that this is what the law says.
There is so much assumption.
They assume that this is what the law says, and some of them have never seen or read the law. And so, with basis of those assumptions,
in some places,
you run elections.
In some places, they tell us that INEC promised. I said
yes. So you say INEC promised. So INEC promised what?
And I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So these are the kind of things, and I think we need to invest in that.
We'll be opening the phone lines in a short while. You can now join the conversation by calling 0915 0910 482. 09150 910 483. You can also leave your questions and comments for us on WhatsApp at 0816 8083 424 and on X at paaca.ng. Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can we meet you?
Good evening to your guest in the studio.
Dr. Hussaini Abdu, Country Director, Care International.
You are on to Comrade Abdullah Mohammed, a.k.a. Aluta Osmis. I'm calling for Bida Local Government Area Council of Niger State.
Comrade Abdullah Mohammed.
The topic of discussion is all about electoral reform. That's a very good topic. But I want to ask, if a non-INEC staff is found with EC 8, that is INEC original result, filled before the conduct of election, what could be the penalty of such a non-INEC official? Then, secondly, after approving billions of naira to Independent National Electoral Commission, we receive a lot of promises that by the special grace of God, as election is conducted, for the unit, the election result will now be sent to INEC portal. But at the end of the day, it failed. It's quite unfortunate. Nigeria happened to be the giant of Africa. So we must do everything humanly possible to see that we ensure that all the elections of any kind should be accurate, should be transparent, and let there be honesty. I remember humble self, Abdullah Mohammed, the of the government.
Thank you very much, Abdullahi, for your calls. Dr. Hussaini, you want to respond to that quickly?
I think it's a question. Even if an INEC official, you are not supposed to actually, before the election, have the result sheet already completed. A crime has been committed, and that's very clear. So it's not even just about being a non-INEC staff. Even as an INEC staff, you can have a completed result sheet.
A pre-filled result
sheet before the election. That's a crime. And such situations should be seriously dealt with. I agree with him. We need to do more about our elections, and probably that's part of the reason why we are having this conversation.
Yes, but this program is also one in which we like to engage our listeners so that they can understand. Because the question he talked about, sometimes people don't know this result upload thing has remained a challenge in terms of understanding.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much clarity that can be put out. That these results are already in the polling units.
Yes.
And
Hello?
the party agents and the security agents before they upload.
They all have copies.
Copies.
Yeah.
Or should have copies.
Yes.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can we meet you, please?
Yes. My name is Adam West from Suleja. And good evening, my guest over there. Yes.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. You see, anything that has to do with electoral reform is very, very important. It's a very wonderful discussion this evening. But the point that we can keep saying is this. We have not gotten it right now. Okay. Because the issue of ballot election has not been really taken care of. Now we are about carrying out an election. We're sending 35,000 government agents to maybe the government election. I remember that we here, I feel it's for rigging. But then we said 30,000 police. Well, maybe we could give state carrying out election, governorship election. Hello?
Hello, listening to you.
Well, with you. Go ahead.
Are you with me?
Yes.
Yeah, wow. So they sent a lot of police to last thing. I think there's something to that. I think it was that should be not just limited. But the law enforcement there is totality. But there's no point. Don't you know that number of police? Thank you. We hope it will get the right hearing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think he's saying two things. One is it's about how much security agencies we actually need to run our elections, and then the second part of it was about ballot snatching and all that. My sense is that ballot snatching has significantly reduced with the introduction of beavers and the system that has been adopted. It actually means that even when you snatch ballot, you just waste it. You can only snatch ballot, which we have also seen in some of our experiences in terms of trying to disrupt and get INEC to cancel the elections in those particular polling unit. But in terms of the traditional ways of snatching and stopping ballots have been seriously, let me use the Nigerian government word, degraded, seriously degraded over because of the use of some of the technology that has been deployed in recent years. But my brother, the challenge is that we all have a role to play, and that we have to continue to educate our people. We have to continue to create awareness. We have to continue to let people understand what elections means to our polity and how important it is for us to get it right.
Hello, good evening.
The use of security agencies is also because of the kind of disruption that elections experience.
Let's take this call. Can we meet you? Good evening. This is
Okay,
Electoral.
yes, thank you very much. This is Abaka Musa calling from Bida, Niger State.
The Niger people, you have taken over our program.
Niger people have taken over, actually.
Yes, can you go ahead, please?
Yes, this is courtesy of your station in Bida, Power FM.
Yeah, I see, probably. Yeah.
They make sure that we are educated on issues affecting the nation. You talked about the issue of vote buying. It's very unfortunate that our electoral process has not solved the issue of vote buying, because politicians believe that when they get into office, they will not perform. The money that will be used in delivering good economic governance, they will take it from the government post through corrupt practices. So they know that at the end of the day, when election comes, they will use that money to buy votes. So I think civil society need to wake up and do more on the issues of need to track funds, so that funds allocated to various projects are judiciously used, especially in the area of human capital development. Vote buying should be reduced, by INEC. And the only way we can do that, I'm recommending and advocating that there's need for independent. INEC should be independent. The appointment of the electoral chair should be removed from the presidency, so that civil society will come in and appoint a credible candidate that will ensure that he conducts free and fair elections. And
thank you very much.
Civil society should do more on ensuring that Nigerians are empowered, because when Nigerians are empowered, you cannot intimidate them by vote buying.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the call.
Yeah, I think the vote buying conversation is here. And again, yes, it's a very big concern, and there's a lot that we need to do. When you buy a vote, you've actually committed crime, and it's there. But what some of us are trying to say is that we also have to look at the bigger picture and ensure that as we are dealing with vote buying in the polling unit, which is one of the symptoms of the corruption in our system, we also need to deal with the root cause of it. So it's like how we get our medications. If you are sick, you have malaria, we give you Panadol to ensure that the fever, which is just a palliative to calm the fever, and then you have to take anti-malaria to actually be able to deal with the underlying cause. And so we have to deal with the both sides, deal with the challenge of vote buying, and INEC has put several mechanisms in place which also need to continue to be updated, but we also need to deal with the challenge of corruption in our polity, and that's very important.
He made a point about the recurring issue of appointment of INEC officials, the commissioners and the chair. It's been a debate. A lot of people still talk about waste report and all of that in terms of nomination and who appoints. I'm not sure we've discussed this before, but I want to know what you think.
You know, actually, my sense is that, look, INEC, by virtue of the Constitution, is it an executive body? An independent, of course, an executive body. And that my sense also is the way we operate. I don't think that the independence of INEC is necessarily, or lack of independence or whatever, is necessarily as a result of the way the chair is appointed. It may be one element of such reflections, but there is this institutional structure of INEC that defines it as part of the public service structure, whose appointment and resource management is governed the way any other institutions in the country is governed. I think what is important is how we can make INEC more professional and professionalize it, and disentangle it completely from the public service or the civil service structure in terms of staffing and the resourcing. And how can we make it, because yes, it's on the first line charge, for instance, but we just talked about how it draw its resources. You can have the legislative approval, but when it comes to cash backing, it can be very challenging.
What does the president actually appoint?
No, the president does, to some extent, that's what people feel, because at the end of the day, he is he writes, he recommends to the parliament.
He nominates.
He nominates to the parliament approves that nomination. So the president, I think, thank you for putting that in perspective. The president does not have the sole approving authority. The president makes nominations to the Senate, and the Senate confirms that.
And there's a Council of States also part of.
Yeah, but the Council of State is about the president consultation process.
Yeah.
But it's not part of the process. But
good evening.
Yes, good evening. This is Electoral Reform Hour. We have Dr. Hussaini Abdu as our guest.
Chairman Freedom Caller Association, Niger State Chapter Concerned Citizen.
Thank you for calling.
I don't have more to say. What I want to say, make federal government to make INEC to be independent itself. And secondly, make Nigeria kill corruption If Nigeria not kill corruption, corruption must kill Nigeria. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you. I think coming back to our conversations, it's the president consult the council largely because it recognized how important that role is, and said, "Look, I will need input from very senior Nigerians who have probably been in my position before," and that works. So it broadens the consultation process. But the challenge for me is that who is the president recommending? How do we arrive at that? I think that's the main thing. Should we, like the South African experience, should that be advertised? Should people apply? Should the president do certain vettings after that application before he makes a comment? But I wouldn't have
the security agents are supposed to vet.
Yeah, but security agents vet after the president has nominated. And for me, you wouldn't find a security agent who will say, "Oga President, don't do this one." The president has nominated. It's a different thing if the president present 2-3 people.
So should the president hands off nomination?
No. I wouldn't say the president should hands off nomination, but I would actually say the president should broaden the process of nomination. So where the president we can have an advert actually that says that this position is vacant. Can you apply? Anyone can apply.
It's a real opportunity to have you on the program. I think I want to see what I can squeeze from you. The much I can squeeze. Diaspora conversations, diaspora voting, and all of that. What are your thoughts? I know about expanding the democratic space.
Yes.
What are the challenges? What are the prospects? What are the value that we can get from diaspora voting?
I have a very unconventional position on this matter. Somebody is saying hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you make it quick?
This is Mahil Badmos from Bida, Niger State.
Badmos from Bida.
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome. Can you make your
what I just want to say, a lot of my colleagues have said a lot, but we are just saying they are buying votes. It's not only the people that are voting that they are buying. Even the INEC officials, they used to buy them because a lot of it used to happen on the election day. So we want INEC should be on independence on its own. So that's only what I can say this evening. Thank you. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you, Badmos. Thank you for the call.
Yeah, I think we've had a conversation on the independence of INEC.
Yes, please.
So diaspora vote. See, my position is that I don't mind getting diaspora to vote, but diaspora have to pay tax. So if we have to extend diaspora to vote, they are citizens, some of them are dual citizens, that is fine. I don't have problem with that. But there has to be a structured national commitment, certain thing that drives it. Any country that you see this kind of diaspora voting, particularly in the developed world, they have
Niger and Ghana, they vote at their embassies here.
Yeah, they vote at their embassies here. I don't know what the kind of thing, but my sense is that I would like to see diaspora paying tax. I run an organization. I know that I pay tax for some of my citizens.
But it's not a requirement for voting. The requirement for voting is that you are 18 and you are Nigerian.
Yeah, but because you are a Nigerian, you are here, you are feeling the pain, you are feeling the system, diasporans will tell me they also have families here. It's a different, I have my family here, I have everybody here. And I'm paying tax. My children are going to school here. And therefore, I'm not saying that they don't have stake. They do have stake in the country. But there must be a properly defined way of... if you are a citizen in Germany, you have to pay your tax. Whether you are in Germany or not in Germany. If you are in the
and we also have challenge of undocumented Nigerians. So how do you even get
they can easily do that. You can people who have documented.
Okay, squeeze something around independent candidacy is also part of the conversation.
I think independent candidacy is one major thing, but I also know that there is limit to in certain elections where independent candidate can work, but it's also part of the process of expanding the democratic space. So if parties have become extremely difficult, then you want to have independent candidates. But in the elections where we struggle, where every political party even want to present a presidential candidate, do you want to have an independent candidate where 100 individuals will say, I want to run
for presidency? That's a huge challenge.
For me, that's a huge challenge.
When you have somebody like Dr. Hussaini Abdu, time 1 hour, it becomes like 30 minutes. Very special thanks to our guest, Dr. Hussaini Abdu, Country Director, Care International. To our dear listener, thank you for joining us on this edition of the Electoral Reform Hour, brought to you by Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, PACA, with support from MacArthur Foundation. Our engineers today on duty, we have Hassan Usman and Roslyn Aduku. The ICT personnel Mohammed Sani, my ever-present studio manager Finehas Udoeyo, and the producer Ondo Hemba Ohin, and supervisor Hussaina Akila MNI. My facilitating crew members are Abu Grace and Jeremiah Bume. Thank you, and we apologize for the questions we could not take today, but the conversation continues next week Sunday, same time, same station. My name is Ezenwa Aguyo, and saying have a nice evening rest. Bye for now.